are there any things that could happen, more to institutional level, or any things that would facilitate this more research informed view of or way of formulating teacher education going forward into the future?
Well, the one that comes to mind is encouraging teachers, presumably teachers. It could even encourage non-teachers or trainees even to perhaps do doctoral work or even master's work, research work at a university level.
Mm-hmm.
I've taken on a bit of a project to see if I can collect as many master's and doctoral theses on a spreadsheet as I can find.
We're very grateful to you for that spreadsheet.
Well, there's a lot of more work to do, and I'm sure that as soon as I leave it go for a month, there's more shows up. But I've collected over 70 doctoral theses and over 30 masters so far, just from Googling. Well, not just Googling, there's some people have already got provided me with information separately from that. And I just need to sort it out and try and collect all the links and do the spreadsheet. So that's going to be a long-term project. But I did it on purpose just because in my thesis I only had one source of information about how many doctoral theses, and that was Joran Staring's thesis. If you've ever read it or seen it,
I've heard the name, but I haven't read it.
Yes, it's an amazing piece of work. And he counted 27 doctoral and master's theses, which I drew on, and none of which were about teacher training. And most of the ones I've collected many of them are doctorates in theatrical arts or musical arts. So the thesis is part of that. And then there's quite a number of other things, still none other than my own on teacher education at the level that I'm thinking of. So when I read these things, it seems that people just need to be keen enough to want to take it on. And there's all sorts of projects, even small ones to begin with, that could work with doctoral work, I think. Interviews, starting with what people think, what they want. Is what's happening very useful at this point? What could we do? What could make it better? How could we improve it? So I think there's a lot of scope for somebody who wants to take that work on and get some initials after their name. So that's where I'm headed. What I would be encouraging at this point, only because I've sort of been there myself. And other than that, consultants, I think the difficulty with consultants is that they're being employed by an Alexander group, so that their findings are going to be vetted to some extent, whereas university findings are going to be independent. Independent in the sense that the doctoral student is not answerable to an Alexander society or other people. It's answerable only to these university research office. And that gives them some independence to find what they need, find whatever they find. So that's all I can think of at the moment, to try and create some formal structure for research. I'm sure people there's informal structure. Every training course director is observing, modifying, changing their approach within the structure they've got. So that informal research is going on all the time. But we never hear about it because nobody writes it up. Or very few people write it up.
Yeah, that's a good point you make. So there's that kind of informal gathering, collection, just writing things down basically, and that could accumulate, that could lead to something, couldn't it? In itself, that would be a useful source of data, wouldn't it? Just people write stuff up more. If we had the habit of doing that more as a profession. I think we're very much into experience, obviously, and a lot of what we experience is very difficult to put into words, and I guess that in itself is a stumbling block.
Not a lot of people are experienced writers either. So
no.
Not sure if I can answer any more to that just at the
moment. Okay, no, that's great. No, is there anything else you wanted to say in conclusion? Any other points you wanted to make? You've been very helpful and very generous with your time.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate what STAT is doing with the what's it, SAS, the
ASO, the Alexander Studies Online.
ASO, yes, ASO. This is sort of one of the things I was sort of hoping would ever happen, and there it is now. So this is great, and I think within STAT there is some scope for using this research that might happen, that I recommend, could very well happen within STAT, or using STAT's resources somehow, in the sense that you've got a lot of training courses. They're all fairly close to each other, relatively, in Australian terms.
Yeah.
And there's a structure that is already in place for well or good in terms of the timetables, and they've also STAT's also already begun a form of research with, where was the school that was allowed to alter Bristol, yes. So that's an example of the small change that was monitored and written up in a way that allowed some decisions to be made about whether it was good to continue that way or not. We've done one in Australia with Michael Stedding's school, similar small change to the pattern, and carefully monitored with the results. And so that's also another example of how things can change. So things are happening in small detail. And I think within that, I think STAT has the infrastructure to sort of help with that in a way that bigger, more rambling societies like the Australian one, that it's just too many people spread around too far away from each other. We barely ever see each other except on Zoom calls. So that's another thought I've had too.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much again. It's been fascinating listening to all you have to say, and interesting career you've had as well.
Well, can I also ask if anybody's come across any doctoral theses or master's theses that they'd like to send me? I'll add them to my spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Become a bit of an opportunity to collect all this stuff.
All right. Thanks again, Terry. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot.